I can't help myself. Hello, gatekeepers. How y'all doing tonight? Good to see you. Good to see you. All these lovely faces in here. I see Lisa. I see Chris. I see Lindsay. So good to have you. I see Henry. I see people on Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube, which we are simulcasting live across the board there. And we appreciate you being there. Thank you so much. And we have Lee from First Floor. I see D Rock. Hi, D Rock. It's good to see you, love. How you doing? Henry, did I say hello to you? How are you doing today? I hope everybody's finding themselves well and happy, smiling, warm, bellies full. Everybody you love is good to go, at least for next 2 hours, right? And this is going to be fun tonight because I'm just making sure. Hey, Uncommon, how you doing? Thank you for being here. Thank you to all my mods. Listen, we have some of the best mods in here, dropping links and different things like that, trying to help people out in the chat, trying to make sure I see a super chat going down on Rumble which is the only place you can do it now, and my PayPal and TeePublic and things like that. We get a little bit for the stickers and the t-shirts, the mugs, which I have quite a few of uh different things, the mug, the travel mug, the t-shirts, the I really like the nice zipper front hoodies. I have a couple of those, and there does seem to be a difference in the quality you pick. So I'll tell you what, I have one of each of those in the zipper front hoodie, and I love them both. And the print has stayed on. There's lots of prints to choose from. There's even ones with Steve Stockton there. So something for everybody. If you want to help out the show, we appreciate it. Everything goes into StreamYard and the internet, and that's it. That's what we're doing. Thank you to everybody that's a member over on Rumble. If you want to be a member on Rumble, I promise you, I'm getting the wheel together. I'm getting the wheel together. We're going to put the names on there of everybody that's a member or people that donate. We're going to spin it. It took me a while to get one that I think was really fair and really seems to be random. So we're going to do that. I know I keep saying it, but it takes a little while to get everything set up. I don't like to do it unless I've got it going. Everything is good, you know, and that and the Kennedy, really deep and digging deep and doing deep dives on that. The rabbit holes on Kennedy are endless. It really is. You can follow one where it takes you, but they all seem to spider web out, which is one of the reasons we're talking about a tapestry and the threads, and we're pulling on threads. So I'm deep diving into that. I believe we'll have our next one tomorrow, and that is going to be my a little bit extra on the LBJ. We're going to get a couple of different people's ideas on that, whether it be authors or witnesses that were there, people that, were around LBJ, little things like that all the way through to give you guys more information so you can better discern where we are in the tapestry of the JFK, the unraveling of the murder of a president. So that will be, I believe we're doing that one tomorrow night. I do not know if Mr. Steve Stockton will be joining me tomorrow. I haven't asked him yet. I wanted to give him as much time as he needed. Hey, Nick, welcome in. Froze Moments, good to see you. So I don't want to say, either way on that one. I hope to see him, but if not, and he needs more time, we're going to give him that time for him and Nick and Holden. What else? Any other things we have to come through? The other show, I am working on the intro for the news show. I want to come through and tell everybody, but listen, if you're paying attention to what's going on around you right now, you should feel a little bit more stable. I told you to trust the man. They know what they're doing. It's a beautiful thing to watch. It's really a beautiful thing to watch. As of this morning, we have 130 countries that are coming to the table to speak with the Secretary of Commerce, Lutnick, and the staff, the team. Trump will be sitting in on the big major ones. So again, if you're worried about, 401ks and things like that, just hold. You should be looking around and seeing different things happening. Things should be getting a little bit better. I don't know what your focus point is and how things affect you. So that's always going to, change your vantage point on things. But I want to get that show together so you guys can ask questions and I can tell you what I found out this week. As of right now, things are going fairly well. Don't believe the crazy news. Don't believe the crazy stuff. The negative things seem to get amplified, and then they add people's thoughts and feelings and emotions in it, and then hyperbole and exaggerations and fear and all that crap. And we're just going to avoid that because we're headed into the golden age, and we want to take everybody with us. And if you are in another country, we want to inspire you to do the same where you are, and not stand for the bullshit. How about that? Stand up for your rights and for your freedoms. It's so important. Hello, Scott. So many people have gone before us. I mean, don't don't make me pull this podcast over. Go before us. So many shows that we've done as far as the Liberty series, going all the way back to the Green Dragon, and the first time that Samuel Adams and Paul Revere and um, John Adams ever clinked a mug of beer together and started talking about their rights, their freedoms, and the things that was going on all the way through. The people that went before us deserve the honor of us standing up for our square foot of real estate and keeping um, freedom alive and the hope, and not just a survival, but a celebration of life, freedom for our kids, freedom of choice, and being able to be in control of our possessions and our everything. Too many people have gone before us to just throw that away. We cannot allow that to happen in any way, shape, or form. And that's my stance. If you disagree with me, that is your freedom to do so. However, the freedoms are for you too. And you have the right to feel that way. So as long as your peanut butter doesn't get in my chocolate, we're cool. We're cool. Okay. So there's that. I'm working on that show. Like I said, I've got the intro going. I want to do it like a weekly catch up. The hardest part is finding the time to do it. I have the time. It's just that works out for the studio where I'm able to get in and be able to do the show. It's going to be a late night one, probably maybe even 9:30, 10 o'clock ish on a Saturday. I hope people would be able to make that, and it will only be on Rumble. Tuesday night at the movies. I've got a couple of. I'm looking for a really good clear copy of one I want to show. If I cannot come up with that one, it's going to be one of the ones we mentioned before. We could do Rosemary's Baby. We could do. I might be able to come up with the others, but I'm also trying to fit in some other stuff too. As far as I'm thinking about showing Executive Decision, maybe even JFK. Not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday. So if you would be interested in that, to join us at on Rumble, and we can talk about that. But the reason I want to push off just a little bit more is I want to get a little bit more base information in there so we can have a solid conversation when we're watching something as complex as JFK. The movie, of course, done by Oliver Stone. I believe it was 92, 91, 92, somewhere around in there. And it was based primarily off the book of Jim Marrs' Crossfire. So it basically focuses a lot in the New Orleans, Jim Garrison part of the tapestry. So I want to get a little bit more, get the rest of LBJ in there, very complex character, and start adding some more in there, build up to Jim Garrison, and then maybe watch JFK. So I think that would be interesting. But as far as this week coming on, we'll probably have a good old ghost movie, quite possibly a werewolf movie that I think is really interesting. Again, I always try to reach out for stuff that's going to have some realism to it so we can learn about it and talk about it, whether it sounds crazy to say realism in vampires or realism in werewolves, but I'm not 100% sure those things don't exist. I mean, at this point, I'm just wide open going, okay, you're gonna have to prove they don't at this point, because I just know too much stuff, whether it's a hybrid or whether it's some other kind of, I don't know, natural or an elemental or some other kind of thing. Who am I to say something does not exist 100%? I don't think I can do that, other than what I think I'm looking at right now in my reality. You know what I mean? So there you go. Hey, hang in, welcome in, welcome in. Let's see. Renice came in here. Good to see you, Renice. Welcome in. Welcome. And thank you so much. Everybody over on Rumble, keep an eye out there. If somebody drops a super chat, please let me know over on the YouTube or the Facebook, or you can actually say it loud in Rumble and it will show me that, but it will not show me if somebody drops money, and I don't ever want to, I don't care if it's $1 or whatever. I don't want to miss being able to say thank you for that. So I'm not going to see it. StreamYard doesn't show it to me in the chat for some reason. Like it doesn't show emojis, it just spells them out, whatever it may be. So it might be a glitch that way. But either way, I don't want to miss that. So guys, yell out and let me know. So also, if somebody asks a question and I miss it and it's pertinent to what we're watching, please, remind me or tell me to go back in the chat and find it, and I will. So how's everybody doing tonight? Let me make sure. You're doing well. Vixen, good to see you. Good to see you. What you got going on? Freaky stuff, portals and whatnot. True. That's what I'm saying. How do we know? I mean, I have zero doubt portals exist because I've experienced certain things around them. And, again, with all of this stuff, I think I have more evidence that the things do exist and the things do happen and the ghosts are real and this is real and this then doesn't exist. I'm at the point where I'm just an old broad and I'm tired and I'm just, look, you prove to me it doesn't. We got so many things. Pretty groovy. It's good to see you. Good to see you, Scott. I'm glad things are pretty groovy. And today is a good day. Good to hear it, Henry. Really, really good to hear it from my heart. That's awesome. Okay, let's see what else we got down here. Did I miss any questions or anything else? Also, a little piece of business about this, if you guys remember, because I got a week, it seems like a month has passed in this past week. And we were talking about, when we were watching the first part of this, it's called The Haunted. It was released on Australia television, I believe, first. And I want to say early 80s. It has a parapsychologist in it. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. It was like Morris Mushy or something. I can't remember what it was. Maybe Moxie. But anyway, Henry, you were pulling up stuff on him. I couldn't find a thing on him. Did anybody else find anything about it? It's okay, Renice, you're right on time. You just missed my blathering on and on. A Tear in the Sky by Carolyn Cord documented portals exist for UAP. There you go. And that's just, yet another thing in the positive bucket, Goes hanging. So cool. You're going to have fun tonight. Maurice, thank you. Yes, Maurice. So I didn't find anything else about him. I don't know whether that's because in Australia there wasn't a lot documented. I don't know. And I couldn't find anything else on this documentary, or else I would have, put it in the description. But this has been so interesting. So to recap, last weekend, we had that crazy house where there was 3 women and they all saw something different, reacted different to what they saw. And at first, the way the parapsychologist, if I remember it correctly, he was describing it as, well, at this point, it could be residual because of how certain the women had seen and what they had seen and how it reacted or did not react to them. And then you had the third woman who there was something else going on, which made them think, okay, this is an intelligent haunting. So I thought that story was important. I love the way they did it, because here's the thing. You can't just take one episode and call it, and I mean, okay, this is poltergeist, this is residual, this is intelligent, this is this. We need to take the time to peel back the layers to get the information and then put it together. And South Africa, who was from South Africa? Henry. Let me see. Hold on 1 minute. I could only find those 2 pages that mentioned him. Oh, and they were from South Africa. Maybe that's where he's based. I don't know. Maybe that's where he's based and they just, pulled on his information, because I love the way he describes things and he seems open-minded enough. The only thing I think I could say that I dared to disagree with, was when he was talking about the poltergeists are mostly always. I just hesitate on that, always, where he said it was the young girl when she had the scratches on her face. Hey, sweetheart. And so that, that's where I was kind of tapping the brakes there. I was wondering where he was going to take that poltergeist, because I think poltergeist, you guys tell me what you think, but I think poltergeist is one of the things that in the paranormal that has shifted the most in definition over the past 20 years. And I think that, and this is just in my opinion, leans mostly on ghost hunters, and Grant Wilson really, really brought that forward a lot. That he thought that poltergeist was a gathering of energy that was reacting to the environment, or somewhere along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, don't quote me on that. But similar to that, not a person, and not a person that has passed and is earthbound and reacting to the environment and making the noise, and not so much PK, where it would be telekinesis and psychokinesis, and the person's energy is actually moving objects and creating um, confusion in the environment, or reaction in the environment, as far as moving things, outporting things, even harming themselves, like the scratches and things like this. That's I think that that's probably the vaguest section of the paranormal, as far as if you were listing types of ghosts, because there's so much controversy on what it could be. So if we just leave that open and say a poltergeist, basically the word is noisy ghost, comes from German origin, and it could be any of those things. So if it is the energy of a person that is living, could it be any less categorized a ghost because the person is still living and not dead? Interesting question, right? Think about it. So does that mean, the only reason I want to be careful with that, because if you have a situation such as in the movie Poltergeist, and this is why we watch these movies on Tuesday, so I can go back and reference things and you guys have seen it, so you have an idea. It's helpful, right? So in Poltergeist, which was obviously titled, that was not a poltergeist that Grant Wilson was describing. Do you see my meaning here? That was a mixture of things. That was a multi-level type haunting with multiple different things involved. Okay? It wasn't just one thing. And if you just kind of lean on these definitions to go, oh, okay, because it's noisy, that it's a poltergeist, therefore it's not a ghost, it's just energy buildup, we're going to miss some things. So try to keep open-minded about that. It's just my suggestion. You know, if you really want to learn about this stuff, you got to keep kind of fluid, when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I hesitate to lean on people that just like I said from the very beginning when I started doing this years and years ago, you can't just throw everything into an envelope. And that's why I get so upset when people say things like, everybody that dies in an accident gets stuck or hangs back. Not true. Everybody who commits suicide stays back. Not true. Every animals have no soul. What? This is going to happen if this happens. Not in every case. And I think when we do that, it's so dangerous. For one, you don't know who's listening, and you don't know what form of grief they might be involved in, or what frame of mind. And you have to be very careful with saying things like that. I think that's just as damaging as saying to someone, that wasn't your grandmother, that was a demon, or that wasn't your grandmother, that was, green jello, an alien, a Fig Newton of your imagination, whatever. It's damaging to somebody's psyche, especially if they're hanging on to something. If you're going to talk them off of a ledge, don't push them while you're doing it. Maybe offer, a multitude of things. And I like to just avoid all that and go, well, what did you feel? Because the most natural thing that we have is our instincts. And what you usually feel first is the energy in which whatever the situation is the energy that moment in time was giving off. And then anything after that is input from us. So if we try to talk ourselves out of it, or if we're scared, or if we want it to be something else, we're going to be disappointed if we don't hear what we want to hear. If we go at things open-mindedly and instinctually, I believe the messages are going to become a little easier, and they're going to come a little clearer, and it's going to be what we need to know at the time. What we think we need to know at the time, we're usually wrong, because we're supposed to be doing this or that, or there's something else coming we don't know anything about. Such as, for example, oh God, please give me this job. I really want this job. And you don't get the job. And then you find out later it was a crap job. Or, oh no, this would have happened. And you went in this direction instead. It's the same type of situation as I want to hear from this person about this situation. If you're not ready and your consciousness is not ready to absorb that information or understand that information, that might not be the message or the person you needed to hear it from at this time, because you're not ready for it yet. And it might not be as profound as we think it, we would imagine that would be. It might be just a little thing that pushes us over here at the right time, or makes us go that direction at the right time, or make us not do something at the right time. So keeping all that in mind is why I take this so seriously, and then not seriously at the same time, because you have to understand why people might be listening to a podcast like this or picking up a book about ghost stories. And, are they just looking to be entertained, or are they looking for information to help them through a life event or an issue, or just having questions about abilities that they have? So this is why you have to take it seriously. You never know who you're talking to on the other side, or what condition that they may be in, or mindset that they may be in. So I'm very careful about what people say on the podcast. I'm very careful. I try to be careful about what I say. I can stand by what I say. And if I come back and find something I told you is wrong, first chance I get, I'm telling you I was wrong. I have no problem doing that, and it may be right away. It might be later on down the line. I'll bring it up and say it, because I want it on record that I found out more information and I was mistaken. And I think that if we do that, we can trust each other, and we can trust the information we're giving each other, because doesn't that just make sense, right? I have no problem with, I'm not driven by likes, by followers, by money, by any of those things. It's just to get the information out, to ease somebody's pain, to ease somebody's mind, to try to answer a question about a situation that they might have. But again, I always get that when they come and they ask me, and I tell them, and now I've just spent an hour with you, and you took my time, and you come back and you're talking to me about the same stuff, and you've done absolutely nothing about it for a week or 2 weeks. Well, I might give you another shot, but now I'm stopping what I'm doing, and I'm talking to you, and it's the same thing it was last, and we're doing nothing about it. So whether it's a haunted house, or whether it's a job, or whether it's something else, I can only give you so much advice. I'm just me, and I lived life, and I paid attention. I don't have a degree other than my BS I got from FU. So life has taught me that you have to let people take their path. And if they come back around, they come back around. But you can't drag everybody, because what good is it? You've drug them to, 100 feet or 100 miles. But if they didn't walk it, they didn't earn it, they don't appreciate it, and they didn't learn anything. So don't feel sorry for people that won't get up and walk. You got to tell them, get up, do it, change your situation, deal with the haunted house. Ghosts aren't pets. You can't keep passing this stuff under the rug, whatever the situation, life situation, or death situation may be, you know. And it has to do with, it might be a ghost visit because of some certain time in your life. There's been lots of those, you know, where a ghost came through at a specific time. Here's a good example. I may have told you the story before. I apologize if I have. But there was a young man. He had a young family, I believe a 3-year-old boy and a new baby. And he was getting really overwhelmed with bills and life and how it can go. And he started to go down the wrong path to make some quick extra money and things like that. Well, there was a complete stranger who happened to be dead, who was earthbound, kind of half in between. It seems like he was kind of could go as far as the in between, but in there he was gaining knowledge and listening to the higher ascended beings that were trying to get him to move one way or the other. That he had done some things in life and he may want to do some things or something to get some of that off, good deeds or um, help somebody out or whatever it may be. Totally paraphrasing here, but it seems to be that those things do go on. So this ghost comes back to a total stranger and starts haunting this family. And the reason he's haunting the family is so interesting because he had no ties whatsoever, didn't even know, as far as we can gather, these people in life at all. But he was close enough in proximity to where this one young father was, that he was able to pick up on the energy, and he recognized that energy. It was familiar to him. He recognized the worry, the despair, the fear, the obligate, the to keep up the obligation of taking care of his family, and trying to. He's getting temptations from um, this other side to do things that would get him locked up or worse. Not good things for the family. And this ghost starts haunting the house. And at first, they're seeing things move and there's bangings and knockings, and they're not putting it together with, it's almost like this guy. It was very similar to Ghost, the movie, where Patrick Swayze was trying to thwart the bad guy from hooking up with his wife, or trying to get in his way of pulling off his little dastardly deeds he was trying to put out. And he was trying to knock over pictures and banging on walls or slamming cabinet doors or whatever it may be to break up the situation. That's what this ghost was doing. Well, as sure as you know, a couple of friends of mine get called in, and everybody, they're studying the case, and it turns out with some good mediums that were able to communicate with this ghost. Found out from not only him, but one of his, let's say his spirit guide, just to keep it easy, one of his spirit guides speaking for him as well, that he was here to help this man. He recognized the path he was going down because it was the same path he went down and it got him killed. And he was trying to stop this guy from going down that dark road. And up to the point of today, it's worked. So it helped out the ghost. He was able to break loose of being stuck in the in-between, I guess, raise up to a higher vibration. And it was a little bit easier for him to move on and go to his next, whatever's next for him. And this young man decided to take the harder road, but the more legal one. And that does happen. And I think that that is one of the coolest things in the paranormal and the supernatural that happens in life. And it's amazing to me that these things go on, but it happens all the time. And it's an amazing thing. So last weekend, we were watching this documentary on Australia. And I thought one of the funny things was that group that went. It was the two ladies and some of their kids, and I guess they were going on a holiday, and go into this house for the week. I guess a summer whatever vacation. And they take the bus, they get dropped off. There's not another car out of there or a bus for a week, and they're stuck in a haunted house. They're told don't go up to the third floor. They go right up to the third floor. And our parapsychologist friend here said, well, now they went right up to the third floor. They had worked themselves up into a fizz and they were hallucinating and they were seeing things and they were talking themselves into stuff. And I think partly that could be true because if you hear something like that and a squirrel jumps on the window or, you know, something bangs for whatever reason or the plumbing, kicks or whatever, and you're not used to these sounds, of course, everything is going to be, oh, it's the ghost. If you're already told that there's something going on, I can see that. But the things they experienced, I would say, were not a hallucination. Listening to their experiences, how they described them, I would say they were genuinely facing some real paranormal activity there. So again, we have that situation of putting everything into one neat little, tidy little package, and I don't think you can do that with the paranormal very often. Um, so the most confusing thing to me was, here I am, I'm in this house with these kids, and whoever else, my friend and her kids, and you're telling me you're going to stay there a week because you can't leave. Um, Start walking. If it's that bad, don't stay. You can find a way out, I would imagine. But anyway, that was very strange. I thought it was kind of quaint and cool too. Um, the last story we left off with was the three Franks. We had the Fisher ghost, and then it finished off with the theater ghost, who I thought that was such a strange story and very unique to theaters. It seemed so many theaters Steve and I have talked about that have been haunted. Um, Usually, actors or actresses or crew that accidentally got killed, ones that didn't get the part or, were having hard times. There seems to be an awful lot of people taking themselves out, in the situation and then staying at the theater. Or you've got horrible things that happen in the theater, fires or some kind of, other devastating thing, the roof fell in or something. And of course, many people are killed and you're going to have ghosts. And theaters are also large. So, because you've got the large stage and you have the large, with all the chairs and everything else, and so much space. If it was a town where some kind of catastrophe happened, often those were used as gathering halls or places to identify bodies or bring the wounded, in case of a civil war or something along those lines. So you've got so much happening around a theater and so much burst of energy, so much laughter at the same time, so much sadness at the same time, watching a play, or exhilaration with song and everything else. There's so much energy in these buildings, and so many of them have these grand architectures and things. Could very well fall along too with the stone tape theory, which we talked about last week as well. So there we have our recap. We're going to start off tonight, unless anybody has any questions. And partially hanging. I'm working on it. Thank you for the encouragement. Life would be what? Life would be a dream. Shaboom. Life would be boring if we knew all the answers to. Isn't that true? I mean, it's like getting the reading the last page of a mystery novel first, I think it would be. I've often thought about that, where they say that if we're reincarnated and we come through, then we leave our past life memory behind. Where young children have that, they're closer to that side, so they still have some memory. We still have the genetic memory that might pop up every once in a while or draw us towards something. We might really like horses because we rode horses in the other life, or we were drawn to be an artist because we were an artist in the other life, those kind of things. But if we were born with the memory, that would be such cheating, because we wouldn't have to go through these lessons, and we wouldn't make the choices we make. We wouldn't learn, um, and make mistakes and get the scars and get the wisdom, right? So it would be so cheating. It really would. We had all the answers. But we're still seeking as many as we can find along the way. What do you got here, hon? Life would, yep. And I just want to make sure I'm not seeing Tear in the sky. Okay, I think I'm caught up. I'm so glad to see y'all tonight. I'm glad you're all doing well. It's a week seems so long. It's really just a couple days if we're in there on a Tuesday, but by Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, seems like a month sometimes with everything going on in the world, right? All right, so we left our friends at Frank, the third Frank, and he was in the theater. So let's see here. Yep, I believe this is it. Let's hit the button and see. Da-da-da, I think I got it. I did.
The historic Princess Theatre in Melbourne is the home of a third well-loved ghost called Fred. It's the apparition of a noted opera singer, Frederick Baker, who died in the theatre under the most bizarre circumstances imaginable.
This one was so good. We'll watch this
On
short
March
one
the
again.
3rd, 1888, Frederick was playing the demonic role of Mephistopheles in a production of Faust. In the final scene of the opera, Mephistopheles returns to Hades with Faust, and Fred, in crimson costume, descended to hell amid theatrical smoke and flames through the stage trapdoor. A platform operated by ropes and pulleys carried Fred below, but he suffered a heart attack on the way down and died without speaking another word. It seems Fred couldn't accept missing out on the final bow, because from the moment he died, strange events were recorded at the Princess Theatre. His ghost has become a theatrical legend. The phantom is known to generations of theatre folk as Federici, a glowing human shape whose appearance spells good luck for any forthcoming production. And Federici has appeared to scores of people over the past century.
As a matter of fact, it was right here. I was sitting where I am standing now, and my back was towards the house, and Malcolm Phillips, who was directing the play, unfortunately Malcolm's now dead, but he was looking out into the theatre, and he said, "There he is, the poor old bastard." And I said, "Who?" And he said, Fred, he's out there in the circle. So I really had to build myself up to it. It wasn't not my favorite moment at that moment of time. And I turned around, and there he was up there in the circle. And the theatre had gone cold. I became conscious of the smell like old lavender. You know that type of smell if you go into an elderly lady's home and you get open linen drawers and you get that strange lavender type smell. But what we saw was a shape of white light like that, with a diffused grey light around it. All I can say is that's what happened to me right here on this stage, and whatever it was up there.
We've just seen two non-threatening but very different ghosts. Federici at the Princess Theatre seems to linger on for no apparent purpose. Fisher's ghost suggests two possibilities. The first is that his spirit survived death and came back to give information about the murder. The second possibility is that his observer gained telepathic information from the murderer's mind and dramatized this up into a projected apparition. But our next ghost is quite different.
Interesting
In fact,
thought.
it may not be a ghost at all. It's a kind of force which brings out the violence in people, and it exists in Clarkfield Hotel, which has the reputation of being the most haunted building in Australia.
I'm actually drinking lavender tea with chamomile. How interesting.
The historic Bluestone pub at Clarkfield, 40 kilometres north of Melbourne, has been haunted for as long as locals can remember. The hotel was built in 1856, and the famous Cobb & Co. coach company used it as a staging post to the goldfields. There's a legend that a young girl was murdered in the building and thrown down a well near the stables. And apart from seeing ghosts, those who live at the hotel seem to suffer from unexplained fits of violence.
What is it with wells?
The upper story walls are peppered with shotgun pellets, and fists have been smashed through doors by owners and staff, who were later driven out in fear. The past 3 generations of hotel owners all insist that Clarkfield Hotel is inhabited by some unexplained force. One example is former licensee Frank Nelson, who scoffed at the idea of ghosts when he took over the hotel in March 1984.
So how long were you in the hotel before anything happened?
3 days. 3 days we were there. And,
What happened?
well, we'd been working, you know, trying to meet a few customers. Only the wife and I there, you know, no staff on. And we'd worked, you know, 3 to 1 o'clock in the morning, and
Could be.
went upstairs and popped into bed. I suppose it was about 2 o'clock. I heard the, you know, bottles rattling and glasses being moved, and I thought, oh, well, some of the locals, you know, you've just taken the hotel over, and a lot of country pubs, the locals walk in and out when they feel like it. So I went to go down to investigate. Got about halfway down the stairs and heard a bit more noise, and I thought, sounds like more than one. I think I better grab something. I felt a real cold draft of wind, like, you know, walking into an air conditioner. It just sort of blew me back a bit. Something like someone picked me up and tried to throw me over the banister. But both hands on the banister, and it just seemed to disappear. Didn't feel any pain, but when I went to get up, my foot was sort of twisted back around. When I went to the hospital, they said it was impossible for me just to fall downstairs, that I would have had to fall from a height, because it was shattered in 3 places, and I had to have 3 steel pins inserted.
How long were you in crutches?
Some crutches for 7 months.
Now, I wanted to stop this for a second because this one is going to describe to you ghosts that actually hurt people. We've all heard that series of what was it, ghosts that attack, and of course all the clickbait on those. Here's the thing, this is another one of those patent answers you get with the paranormal where they say ghosts can't hurt you. I say bullshit, because I know too many cases and too many things, too many things happen to me, too many things I've seen with my own eyes to tell you, and so many stories of yes, they can. And some of them can be very subtle about it and take their time. So that's not to scare anybody. That's to say, don't underestimate your enemy if it is, in fact, an enemy. Because anything that's trying to hurt you or disrupt your family or your home or cause, you know, a riff or confusion or any kind of situation in your family and is working on one person to make them crazy or anything else, right down to the ones that push you right down the stairs or off a balcony or out a window, or manipulate your mind to get you to do things that you wouldn't normally do, to oppress you or anything else. Yes, they can. And you should know that going in to where you're prepared for that, if that makes sense. Because you have to respect the situation and the possibilities. You can't just flippantly throw out stuff like, you know, I'll do this and then that'll fix it forever. Or I'll say this, or I'll, you know, react this way. I think that gets too many people into a problem where it could have been solved so much easier if you just didn't keep making it worse by believing nonsensical things like that. Those patent answers. I heard that growing up. That was the first thing, you know, I can remember being told by adults. Oh, ghosts can't hurt you. They're just, you know, a figment of your imagination, or they're this or that. But they were very adamant about the fact that they could never hurt you because they weren't physical. And I found that to be not true. Let's just put it that way. Okay, back to this man. Here we go.
Are you absolutely convinced that some supernatural force was the cause for that?
Well, to start off with, I didn't think it was. And, I didn't want to go to the hospital and say the ghost or something was throwing me down the stairs. It was the things that happened to me later on that convinced me that there was something there. The thing that frightened me the most, I used to have my name called out at night, and this had happened 2 or 3 times a week. I'd get out of bed and think, you know, someone wants to buy some beer after hours or something like that, you know. There'd just be no one there. And then one particular night, I was in bed in the room on my own, and the door opened, and the presence of something was there, and the next thing, I had my leg in plaster, and a hand came on my leg and started twisting it. And I grabbed hold of the crutches that were beside the bed, and I was, get away, get away. And
was the room in darkness?
It was in darkness. Anyway, I got up and I put the light on, and the door had shut again, so I put the deadlock on it, hopped back in the bed, and the door opened, and that was it. I just lay there going hot and cold.
The current cook is Graham Fairley. 3 of his predecessors were affected by ghosts.
Me
2
too.
became violent and had to be taken away by police. The other eventually fled the building in terror. Graham doesn't think he'll last much longer either.
I tell you, if you look out here
Interesting,
now,
Lisa.
it's a nice country style living, country scene. It looks really nice at this stage, this time of the day. But at night time, if you come up here, you just happen to be looking out here, I don't know what it is. It's maybe that well, there's a well down there, there's that tree there. But you get a very cold feeling, just comes really chilling, blood chilling, and it comes all over your body, and you just can't stand it any longer. You just say, I can't explain why it is.
Do you look through that window anymore?
Not after the first 3 times, no. No more.
Have you ever seen anything as you look out there?
Yes. Actually, one night the second night I was here, I was looking out and I was looking at that tree, and it's quite a nice tree, but all of a sudden, there was this face of a man, a person, was like peering at me out of the tree. I looked, and I thought, oh, it must be the light or some, I don't know what, I can't explain it. So I looked again and had a close look, and no matter which way the tree was blowing, that face stood still. All the branches were blowing, and but that face stood stock still, staring at me.
What effect did that have on you?
Well, that's it. I just closed it. That's why I'm leaving, to be honest, I mean, that's just incredible. I have experienced a mist early in the morning in the kitchen. You walk down, there's no mist anywhere. You go into the kitchen, it's just full of mist, like a fog. Since I've been here 3 times, I've seen all the animals just go berserk at night. The whole lot of them, from the rabbits to the dogs, donkeys, the goats, the ducks, they'll just all go berserk, crazy. We run around in the paddock out there, just unbelievable. And one night I got the manager, and I said, Steve, we better go down and check this out, thinking it might have been a fox or something like that. We went down there was nothing there, and they were still going all berserk, just all running around in circles. Incredible.
There is some force there. Whatever it is, I couldn't explain it, It's something that, really gets to you after a while. You're starting to look over your shoulder when you walk upstairs at night.
I hope you're in good spirits after your visit to Clarkfield Hotel. Unfortunately, that was another case in which people got hurt. In haunts like that, 2 factors seem to be involved. The first is in the building, and in only 13% of cases does exorcism clear that. In another 13%, it makes things worse. The second factor is the personality of the observers, and personality is very difficult to change. So perhaps the most practical thing that you can do is to move out of the haunted building. But our next ghost is much more attractive. In fact, she's my favorite in this series, and I'm sure you'll like her too. She's a sexy young lady in a red bikini who haunts a modern house in Adelaide.
Here you go,
As the
boys.
story develops, ask yourself what meaning she could have for the man who is the one person at a crowded party who could see her. She's a ghost whose symbolic qualities exceed even her considerable ghostly attractions.
I think this one goes a little... There was some reason for this. This is a little crazy. It's different.
Mrs. Dyke Close says she had just moved into her brick veneer home in Elizabeth Downs in Adelaide when one of the most amazing ghosts on record manifested itself in the hallway, then disappeared, leaving a pool of yellowish liquid behind.
She was small, about 5'2", very attractive, shoulder-length brown hair, always wore a bikini.
How did she behave?
Aggressively to begin with, very much so. I woke up one night and I felt that I was being strangled. I could feel this pressure around my throat. Things would get broken in the house. The whole house just seemed one of aggression, depression. It was just an awful feeling.
Di's friends thought she'd gone mad at first. But then one by one, visitors to the house also began to see the ghost, and it made almost daily appearances. It was an experience which gave vehicle welder Brian Hall the shock of his life.
Oh, there was a party going on, and my parents were invited, and I was on my own single, so they said, why not come along?
Did you know Di Close very well?
No, I didn't. My parents did, but I didn't.
Did you know about the story of the ghost in the red bikini?
No, I'd heard stories of things happening in the house, but not actually a ghost. Yeah.
What happened when you went there?
Well, I was sitting with my parents and their friends having a drink, and there was a young lady sitting across from me, but on an angle round in the other part of the room, and she was sort of looking at me, giving me the, the nod, you're on your own, I'm on my own. A couple of minutes later, I saw her come walking through from a different angle in a bikini and go out the back door to the swimming pool. And I thought, that's strange, nobody else in the pool, it's not midsummer. So I got up and walked across to the window, and there she was in the pool. So I went out. I didn't actually speak to her. She was just sort of floating around in the pool. And I went back inside to get a drink. And when I looked, the woman was still sitting in the same seat. And I thought, that's strange. So I asked the people that was with me, has she got a sister, or is there somebody here that looks like her? And they said, no, what's the problem? I said, well, I've just seen her in the swimming pool out the back. And they said, oh, rubbish. There she is, still sitting there. So with that, I went back and looked out the window, and there she was still in the pool. So I went out. And as I went out the door, she came to the side of the pool and put her arm out to me as if to say, take my hand sort of thing. And I did. As I put my hand into her hand, that was it. She just vanished and left me standing there freezing sort of cold, and she was gone.
Did you feel anything as you put your hand through?
Nothing.
Did you tell people about it afterwards?
Well, there was another friend came out, and he was standing behind me, and when I turned round, he just looked at me and said, you've seen something, and I was standing sort of like this, and he grabbed hold of my hand and said, it's frozen. You've seen something come inside, I'll get you another drink. And that's what we did do, and then the story came out that supposedly there was a ghost of some young girl in that house.
What effect did this have on you in the weeks that followed?
Very much like I am now, I suppose. I get very nervous talking about it, and it gives me an horrible itch, a real uncomfortable feeling.
Scientists talk about the possibility of collective hallucinations, of telepathic projections. Mm. And of course, a lot of people talk about ghosts. Are you convinced that this actually was a ghost?
Yes, because I know what they say about this collective hallucinations. It couldn't possibly have been, because there were so many different days, different times, different people. You didn't have to have a crowd. There could be just one or two people there. And it'd be all odd times. So it was just too obvious to try and explain it away. There was a ghost there.
Adelaide's bikini ghost is just one example of the ancient belief that spirits can inhabit water. To find another, we must travel more than 2,000 kilometers to where the hulk of a 7,300-ton freighter, the Alchemos, sits abandoned off the Western Australian coast.
I wanted to stop it there for a second because that story there with the girl in the bikini, let's unpack a little bit of that. He's at a party. He looks across the room. He notices a girl looking at her, looking at him. Of course, he's going to notice that. I'm here alone. You're here alone. You know, you heard him. And she's still in the chair. He sees her in the chair, but then he notices her coming down the hallway in a bikini. She goes out to the pool. Of course, he's, following her with his eyes. He goes out to the pool. She swims up to him. I didn't get to hear him say anything like he heard the water, other people heard somebody swimming in the pool or anything like that. I don't think this was an hallucination or any. I agree with the lady who just spoke and said, look, she was seen here in so many days and so many times by different people. So moving past that, there's obviously a connection with maybe the energy off of him, a young man, is she connecting with that? Is she just, kind of pulling a trick? Is she like a trickster? Does she want attention? I'm not hearing anything about she shows up and tries to tell them anything or tries to show them or get them to follow her. This is weird because he says she's in the pool, but she's still sitting in the chair. So why the interviewer isn't asking, like, did you go over and speak to the woman that was in the chair? Was she still there? What did the owner of the house tell you? Did they tell you that, there was any kind of other issue? Somebody had passed there or drowned in the pool? There's so many questions I have. But I think this is unique in the fact of, one, here's this girl sitting in the chair and in the pool at the same time, wearing a bikini, obviously wet, the guy goes to grab her hand, she disappears, which is profound. Somebody right behind him obviously notices that he's been through something, seen something odd just happened, enough to say, let's get you back inside and get you a drink, So I would have loved for them to dug a little deeper on this, but from what we can get from what the house owner was saying, this happens all the time. Why nobody is digging into the history of the place, or was there a murder there? Did somebody accidentally drown? Whatever. We probably never know. But it's interesting on the level of the ghost being seen in two different places by the same person. I don't recall them saying anybody else saw her sitting in the chair. So I don't know. What do you guys think? It seems like a different kind of a case to me. She's obviously trying to get attention, but what is this when she's leaving slime behind? That's something you don't hear an awful lot about in this, say, the last 2 decades of ectoplasm or slime being left behind. It was big in the 70s being brought out. It was big in the 20s and 30s with all of the ghost photography and the charlatans with the gauze and the cotton and all that kind of stuff. But ectoplasm was spoken about more then than I think now. What's your take on that? And why would one, I mean, even in Ghostbusters, Slimer, right? Amityville Horror, the slime coming down the walls, the slime in the toilets. Even though I think George Lutz came out at one point in time and said that it wasn't slime in the toilets, the actual toilet itself, the actual ceramic of the toilet turned black. So there's that. But he said that it was like chunky slime on the walls, on the floors, and electrical sockets and things like that. So I don't know if they were really pushing that towards ectoplasm, but that's something to look into, look for, not so much look into unless you want to, but to listen to modern stories about ghosts and go back about 40 decades and wonder what's the difference in the mention of this ectoplasm. Yeah, Ghostbusters had it, as you sure did. I know of several. One of the most famous ones to me, and from my vantage point, is the one in Gettysburg with the wonderful Mark Nesbitt and Carol Nesbitt, his wife. I don't know if they were married at the time. I think they were. And of course, you know the story about George. He was a park ranger, I think 30 something years at Gettysburg, and he got called by one of the other rangers. Now they stay in the houses that are that are on the battlefield, and it's safety, and it's a cheap place for rangers to stay, and it all works out. So anyway, one of these really haunted, I think they all are. This guy kept getting what you could consider a slime or an ectoplasm or goo just showing up on the floor, on these wood floors of this house that was there during the Battle of Gettysburg, probably way before that. And this one night he calls up Nesbitt, and he goes running over there, and he says, look, it appears and it disappears. So Carol shows up, I guess, with Mark, and she runs out. She gets a tissue. She takes a sample of it. She's connected to going to Gettysburg College, and she decides to take it to the lab, has it, goes through the, connections there, and they get this analyzed, and it came up human DNA, human blood. And it blows you away. It blows you away. And it was gone within an hour of when they took that sample. So was that considered ectoplasm, or was it something else? So again, we got to be careful of putting everything in one box. Just because it's slimy doesn't mean it's, what is it? We don't know. Is it some kind of, residue from trying to become physical, a non-physical thing trying to come physical to this plane? It's way beyond my understanding, but it's interesting to think about. But the ghost in the bikini, for some reason, it just seems so odd to have them say she left behind a puddle of slime. It's so odd. What do you guys say? And they are dangerous. Okay, in Thailand, let me see here. In other places, dirty toilets are places where junk spirits live. Oh, really? Ew. They are dangerous. Well, you got to think, what would want to hang out there, right? It can't be good, right? All right, let's get back to this. See what they come up with. Yeah. Trying so hard not to hit the wrong buttons, folks. So far, so good. Sorry about the glitchy stuff last weekend. I didn't know it was coming out glitchy, but we were having all kind of storms, so.
The old steamer is trapped on rocks and sand just offshore, with the wind singing eerily in her rigging and waves lapping the gaping rents in her side. When the tide is high,
this is something.
She shifts restlessly, as if yearning to head out to sea, and local crave fishermen always give her a wide berth. With the superstition common to all seagoing folk, they believe the Alchemist is cursed. Many of them testify to having seen a dark figure in oilskins.
That's a great point, Lisa.
They call Henry, stalking the deck at night. No one goes on the wreck now, and even an hour aboard alone is the stuff nightmares are made of. The Alchemist seems to scream as its rusted metal structure is slowly torn apart by the sea. Many people believe the Alchemist was a cursed ship even before the ghost appeared.
Don't you call them Scott.
The old wreck has an almost incredible history of ill fortune. She was launched in America in 1943, But no company kept her long before selling her off, and her name was changed several times, which is an old seafaring recipe for bad. Repairs after constant collisions, breakdowns, and groundings had given her an extra 153 millimeters in length by the time she reached Australia, and the alchemist still seemed bent on her own destruction. She ran aground 250 kilometers north of Perth and later caught fire in the dock. She was ordered to Hong Kong for repairs, but the tow rope snapped and she was driven onto a reef. A second tug which tried to tow her off also caught fire. Then the alchemist snapped her anchor chain and was permanently grounded. Since then, she has caught fire 6 times, and every attempt to salvage her has met with accident, injury, or death. She has been abandoned for the past decade, and those who do venture aboard never forget the experience. One such witness is Ray Krakauer, an Anzac veteran who's now a local justice of the peace.
I was asked to do a bit of looking after it and do a bit of salvage. I spent weeks on it, days on it. I heard talking many times. You hear this guttural talking. Now, the wireless cabin was sealed up with a lock on the door. I heard the Morse key sending out a message. You're saying things go on. And here's a locked room with no one in the room, and the Morse key, a hand Morse key, working itself with no power. While working in the number 3 hatch, removing some degaussing apparatus, out of the darkness, an apparition appeared, almost like a fluorescent light. It was the shape of a person. So I picked up a piece of 3x2 and I was going for it. And then the junk that was lying around was in my way, and I thought, well, there's going to be an accident one way or other. So I just turned and went up the ladder. If I say a thing happened, it happened. I'm not going to tell a man who saw somebody walking with their head under their arm in the Tower of London, say he didn't see it. He said he saw it. Okay, he saw it. Now, I know what I saw. I know what I experienced. If I say it, that happened. That's what happened.
One of Western Australia's top skin divers and salvage operators, Jack Sue, has written a book about the shipwreck and firmly believes he too has been touched by the alchemist's curse.
This is so sad.
Jack swears that while on board, he heard moaning coming from an empty bunk, and his wife was tragically killed in a car accident during the same period.
And after my own personal experience and the loss of my former wife, nobody would ever convince me otherwise than that there is something wrong with that ship.
Do you blame the ship for the death of your wife in any way at all?
Yes, I do. Almost everybody that's been on that ship for any length of time spent or been involved with the ship in business matters, nearly all have had some ill fortune, illness, or tragedy.
People who board the Alchemist seem to step back into the past. In some curious way, she seems to be busy with unfinished business. There are cooking smells coming from her galley, Morse from her radio room, men walking about on her deck, and there's Henry in his yellow oilskins, riding out some invisible storm. What a pity that there was nobody there who could understand Morse. Now we'll never know what the content of that message was,
right,
or the date of the transmission. Alchemist poses us with a problem of deciding when ordinary bad luck turns into something more sinister. To the people trying to dismantle her, Alchemist seems to be fighting back stubbornly, injuring and harming those people that are trying to destroy her. But perhaps we better leave her to become a legend similar to the Flying Dutchman, and instead move from shipwrecks to ship relics housed in a building with a very interesting history.
It's hard to imagine
Doesn't
a
he?
building with a more brutal and
Could
tragic
be.
past than Fremantle Museum. It was built in the 1860s to house convict men and women who had gone insane after suffering the cruelties of the British penal system.
Yep. Heard
It
that,
was
Lisa.
called Fremantle Lunatic
That's awesome.
Asylum, and before the installation of padded cells, prisoners were chained and doused with cold water if they became uncontrollable. The building has had a haunted reputation for as long as people can remember, and according to staff in the old limestone museum, no less than 4 ghosts now roam its rambling corridors. Visitors to the museum have also had strange experiences. One witness is producer and director Jerry Atkinson, who wrote a play about a ghost and staged it in the museum quadrangle at night. The leading lady, a girl called Judy, was in period costume, and at intermission, he followed her into the building to discuss the next scene.
And I noticed her going up the steps to the dressing room, because the dressing room was upstairs. And I followed her, calling out, "Judy, I'd like to talk to you about a change in one of the moves." But I didn't get an answer. I noticed her just walking up the steps. There she was in this old gown. And I kept on calling, and she didn't answer. And then she went into the dressing room. I saw her go into the dressing room. The door closed. Well, first of all, that was against the rules, because I had a rule in that particular production. That door was not to be shut because we had children in the cast. And then I thought perhaps she was a little bit upset, as happens in plays. So I knocked on the door and found it was locked and called out. No answer. I was getting a bit annoyed about this, really. And then all of a sudden, I heard a voice. I turned, and there was the real Judy behind me, coming up the stairs after I'd been up to knock on the door. Well, we opened the door, and when we went in, there wasn't a soul there. And
Was there any other way out?
No, there were only windows, and there's a sheer drop. It's the first story.
Did you check the room to see if anyone was hiding there?
Yes, we did. We looked right round. We couldn't find a soul.
Over the years, several staff members have testified to seeing the ghost of a woman which carries a lamp and moans softly as it wanders the museum galleries at night. The ghost seems to be endlessly searching for something, and they believe the apparition is that of a convict woman who went mad with grief after her young daughter was abducted more than a century ago. Records show the woman eventually committed suicide by jumping from the first-floor window of what is now the Investigator Gallery. The ghost seems to react most strongly when young schoolgirls visit the old asylum. Mrs. Emily Johansson, a former museum attendant, witnessed one such incident.
But a building with that type of cruelty and sadness, there must be some waves left behind. And that's what I always did feel. When anything had happened, it was always either this agitation or aggression. 3 young teenagers came down from John Curtin High School. All of a sudden, 2 locked this other one in the cell.
Let me out!
That's just wrong.
She just shrugged me off and shot off like a scared rabbit. But it was the feeling at that time of, I'd say agitation is the term that comes to mind.
Is it possible that it was simply the wind?
No, oh no, Recherche Gallery, well, you know, it's quite sheltered really. There's no way, not even a gale would come in there.
Did you notice that Fremantle Museum had the apparition of a living person, the leading lady at the play? We now know that such apparitions occur when people have out-of-the-body experiences. so that if we could somehow find a way of inducing those out-of-the-body experiences, we could perhaps produce apparitions to order. One way is to put the person in a sensory isolation tank. They are floated in warm water in complete silence and darkness. In a little while, some people feel that they are left their bodies and they can be asked to try and visit a particular place and bring back a report of what they see. This type of research has obvious military applications for spying and is being explored by both the Russians and Americans. But when an apparition confronts a scientist unexpectedly, it's much more difficult to study. Take the case of the CSIRO researcher who saw the grey ghost of a girl who died the previous century.
The 152-year-old mansion, Stowell House, is Tasmania's headquarters for Australia's scientific research organisation, the CSIRO. Stowell sits on Battery Point, the most historic section of the state capital, Hobart.
I'm with you, Lisa.
And there's a century-old legend that an upper story of the old building is haunted by the grey ghost of a beautiful girl called Amy. Of course, scientists scoffed at the story when they first took over the mansion in 1949. They included the head of research development, Dr. Don Martin.
In those days, to work back a lot because I was trying to do scientific work as well as administrative. And I noticed that the footsteps down below, which I would go down to investigate to find no one there, and I thought, oh, well, wind and movement in an old building. I used to have an office upstairs, and seated at the desk looking straight at the doorway, I was conscious of this figure of a young woman, I would think 18 or so, dressed in what appeared, it wasn't in Technicolor, it appeared to be as if it was a grey dress, full skirt, probably a hoop at the bottom. So I'm not sure, I think my impression was half sleeves, but it was, as you got towards the neck and above, it was transparent. I looked up and saw it standing there, then it moved down the corridor to the right.
Did it scare you out of your wits?
No, I didn't. I was surprised to see it more. I was sort of surprised. My reaction time's fairly slow, I think.
Did you think of investigating it or experimenting with it?
Oh, no, I didn't. I sort of felt that this was out of my field altogether, being a botanist by training, which is fairly prosaic.
Did you believe in ghosts before you saw the apparition?
Not consciously, no. No, I'm not a very religious person, but I always felt that anyone who believed in any sort of life after death would have to really consider the possibility that there would be ghosts.
You must have thought about it a lot as well. Did you consider the possibility as to whether or not it may be an hallucination of some form?
Well, it might be in my mind, but I can't connect it to any past experience which would lead me to think it was just something projected from past experience.
You know, I can sympathize with Dr. Martin. In cases like that, where a ghost appears only very infrequently, it's very difficult to set up instruments so that you can investigate it scientifically. Instruments like cameras, tape recorders, recording thermometers, and even infrared detectors have been used to monitor haunted houses. But in our next case, the investigators most imaginatively have used a new type of detector which they designed and built themselves.
Stephen Franklin is a 16-year-old Melbourne student whose interest in ghosts began with the film Ghostbusters. He decided that what the filmmakers created as a fantasy, he would try in real life.
Here we go.
Stephen is not really your average teenager. At 16 years old, he's been selected as an exchange student to America and is taking part in NASA's summer space program. His two friends, John Wilson and Damien Gould, also 16, are fellow science students.
I got my basic inspiration from the movie Ghostbusters, and I approached John after that and asked him whether he could build me equipment that was, they had on the movie.
First of all, I thought he was nuts, but then I became interested after he told me what he wanted to do, so I had a go at it, and we kind of had several attempts and built our way up. this here's the transmitter, and it's just like your ordinary FM radio and transmitter, except it works on a much more obscure frequency. And this is our receiver. Now, that receives the transmissions from here. Now, what happens is any electrical fields or disturbances between the two is monitored at the receiver, and we can get a visual output of it here at the oscilloscope, which virtually just tells us what the signal looks like.
So put simply, it's a ghost detector.
Yeah, or we hope it is.
Isn't
The
that
trio
great, though?
advertised themselves as
Kids
ready
doing
and
that.
willing
That's
to
great.
remove troublesome ghosts from haunted premises. And to their surprise, a woman offered them $500 to rid her restaurant of a poltergeist. They refused the money, but took up the offer and spent a nervous night in the Black Rose restaurant, which is
Good for
housed in a
them.
Victorian
Good for
terrace
them.
in the Melbourne suburb of St Kilda.
What did you find?
We're not too sure. Overall, well, we think there's possibly something there.
What makes you think that?
Just the readings we picked up with their equipment.
When we returned to the Black Rose restaurant, it was closed down. The woman who asked Stephen and his friends to get rid of the poltergeist had fled the business, leaving no forwarding address. The previous owners said they had no problems with ghosts when running the Black Rose. But when we tracked down the owners before them, it was a different story. Ernst Patzold operated the restaurant in 1978.
My concern was one night we were sitting in the Black Rose restaurant, an alcove area. We were sitting there, and we had sort of somebody walk down the stairs because it was old wooden stairs. And I got up and I looked, and there was nothing there. And so that was pretty spooky in a way.
Did you see anything else happen there?
Yes, one day I was sitting as well in the same area, and I heard something falling outside, and I got up and I looked in the restaurant, and there was actually a sugar bowl, which the waitress claimed she must have put in the center, but I don't know if I have to believe her, but it was all sprayed all over the floor.
What was the most dramatic thing that happened?
Well, the dramatic thing actually happened to my partner, Brian, when he was doing the book upstairs in the office, he was sitting and there was a glass standing just on its own, and all of a sudden it just shattered into virtually a million of pieces. It was incredible, all fine little small particles.
Would you be willing to go back to the restaurant, all of you, and see if there is anything there with your equipment?
Yeah, we'd love to. Yeah.
Not scared to do that?
No.
Good for them. That's cool too, that it shows you that it's the people too, where they didn't have any problem before, but the people before that did. Interesting. Let me know if you do, Lisa.
It's messy. Yeah. Going to set the equipment up in the back room? No.
They are.
Like we had it last time.
My pleasure, baby. I think it's wonderful. I mean, they could be doing so many other horrible things. Look what they're doing. They're using their brains and science and wonder.
For 12 weary hours, the boys monitored the deserted restaurant. And at one
Open-minded.
stage, they did manage to record an unexplained energy form on their ghost detector. When we returned, just before dawn, they could hardly keep their eyes open.
Several times we've detected something in the energy in the field.
Something seems to pass through.
Through the field. Yeah, we couldn't tell you what it was, but it was a definite something in the field.
You don't have any explanation for that?
No.
Anything apart from that?
Yes. While we were downstairs, on several occasions we heard footsteps above, and we've been talking to some other people, and it seems that it's a frequent occurrence. So that's something which could be investigated.
Stephen, do you feel as if you've proved that there's anything in this building?
Certainly had a go at it. We've tried.
I'd like some more proof.
Stephen, do you believe there's something here?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Why do you believe that?
I've got a hunch about it, I suppose.
And Damien, the official skeptic, do you believe there's anything here?
No, nothing. Only it just proves how hard these sort of things are to prove.
No one has ever provided unchallengeable proof that ghosts do exist. Recordings and photographs of apparitions are too easily faked, and no scientist has yet managed to convince a ghost to enter his laboratory for examination. The strongest evidence is the testimony of thousands of people around the world who have experienced something beyond the understanding of conventional science. It has not been possible to include interviews with all the witnesses involved in the 14 hauntings in this program. But in each case, at least 3 people claim to have observed supernatural phenomena at the site involved. The girls in Brisbane are supported by 3 other witnesses. There are 4 recent witnesses to the haunting of the parsonage at Port Arthur, and scores of other recorded sightings during the past 112 years. At least 7 police testified to the haunting at Rose Bay Police Station, and hundreds of people heard the mysterious poltergeist knocking at East Oakley in Melbourne. The horrifying events at York Hospital were witnessed by 5 adults and 28 children, and the haunting at the Rocks Visitor Centre was also witnessed by a number of police while it was used as a coroner's court.
That's a lot of witnesses.
4 local businessmen testified to having recently seen Fisher's ghost, but they feared ridicule and declined to be interviewed. More than 40 sightings of the ghost of Federici at the Princess Theatre have been recorded since the turn of the century.
How about that?
And a similar number of people claim to have had ghostly experiences at Clarkfield Hotel over the same period. 12 rather amazed people claim to have seen Adelaide's curvaceous bikini ghost. And there are dozens more who claim to have seen the shipwrecked ghost of Henry or suffered the curse of the alchemists. Over the years, 7 staff members and a number of visitors have reported supernatural phenomena at Fremantle Museum. The grey ghost of Stoller House has been seen or heard by a scientist, a chemist, a hospital matron, and an unknown number of local people. There are 4 known witnesses to strange events at the Black Rose restaurant, not counting the 3 students with their ghost detector. Witnesses in this program have signed a document which states that they have given a truthful and accurate account of their experience.
We've come to the end of our exploration of the supernatural, and I wonder what you've made of material we've presented. If you've had a similar experience, then you can see that you're in good company, because a judge more than a century ago and modern scientists, housewives, builders, sailors, and policemen have had similar experiences. Hauntings pose fundamental questions about the nature of man. They suggest that a part of human personality is free of space and time and may even survive death. Of course, we've got a lot more to learn about the supernatural. But as a psychologist, I'd like to say this. The ghosts you've seen on this program were as real to their witnesses as the chair that you're sitting in or the television set that you're watching. Perhaps more real than my image that is talking to you at the moment. You see, there are many levels of reality, and we live in a much more fascinating and complex world than some people would have you believe.
Amen, brother. Absolutely. I agree 100%. So it was somebody named Frederick. What was that name? Frederick Parkslow was the narrator. And I don't think our parapsychologist friend is in here. Let's see. All right, it's just gonna go on. Very interesting. I think they did a great job. I really, really do. And Australia, you're just kicking over there with so many hauntings and the traditions. Now, there was something you said, Lisa, I absolutely loved, and I think I started so I could remember to bring it back up. And it was something about the cultures. Oh, here we go. I found it. I am always wondering if different people from different cultures act differently in death too. I have all my life, and I've come to the conclusion I'm satisfied with believing yes, they do, because I think so much of it has our own individual input in it, so I heard a story about it was alien abduction, I believe. And it was a young couple. They were in a camper in the desert, UFO sighting, all the typical stuff, the lights and everything glowing and things going nuts, and it lands. I'm not sure how many beings they saw all at once. I mean, I think it was one at first, and then it wound up being like 3 or 4 of these alien beings. Of course, most common, more likely a gray. I think they were like a light gray, and they were skinnier than normal and all this other stuff, but they were basically what we would think as a gray alien. And during this time, somehow the husband got separated from the wife. The wife is in the van or wound up jumping back into the camper. The guy is outside. She's looking through the window and seeing something happening to him, like he's conversing with this telepathically with this being outside, and he's reacting. I don't know whether he was levitating or glowing, or there was something going on with him and this alien, and it was disturbing and frightening to her. And of course, and somehow that's when the back doors of the van blew open, or the door in the back of the RV or whatever it was blew open, and there is standing, this is her telling it, there is standing this gray alien that just started to glow light around it, and then all of a sudden turned into what she considered to be an angel, with the whole thing that you would imagine an angel to look like, the common description: wings and long flowing hair, the long flowy white dress kind of thing, or whatever. Very comforting to her. She later on, I believe, went through, I want to say, regression hypnosis, maybe somewhere along something like that, and was saying that the alien was actually telling her at the same time it was showing her this, that he was appearing to her in a different form in order to comfort and calm her. And he thought this would be the best way, because his appearance was freaking her out. This was the gist of it. Very interesting to think about it, because of course, if ghosts can appear to you at some times in different forms because of what they want to project to you, this is very common. I've told you of cases I've been involved with, and where there's 3 mediums in the room, and this entity is appearing 3 different ways to each one at the same time. And this was a human ghost. This was not an entity or an ancient or something along this line, or a trickster or anything like that. So you have to wonder where we get that ability. And if we get that ability, our loved ones even coming back, we've heard, they come back as you would recognize them. So if say you lost a child, this child would come to you as a child rather than its progressive spirit on the other side. But it can also come to you as its age progressed spirit on the other side, and come back and go, hey, I'm such and such. I'm all grown up now, kind of thing. So we've heard both, and multiple things like that from the same case, if that makes sense. So here's an example. Say you know your grandfather as your grandfather looked when your grandfather passed at a grandfather age. But he comes back as he was when he was 30-ish, and you're talking to him and you realize, this is my grandpa. But as he was earlier, even though the last time I saw him, he was 80, 90, whatever. So all of these things. And I think what you believe can really affect you untold ways. because just like the lady in the van, what comforted her was the vision of the angel. And it did. She said it worked. She calmed right down, and her breathing, she was able to get a hold of her breathing, and, other things happened and whatever. But the most important part was that. And other things coming back to show you as comforting, or what you're familiar with. So why wouldn't it be, to come back, to circle back, your influence on what you believe and what comforts you and what is going to be, say, home to you or love to you or healing, all of those things. Absolutely, I would say 100% culture, what you believe, would have an effect on that in so many ways, on so many levels, because it's emotional, it's spiritual, it's physical, it's metaphysical, it's all of those things. So it's also what you are, and you are the combination of all things that, all of the information, all the things you've been through, all the things you've thought and acted out and dreamed about and wished for. You're all those things wrapped up into one. So it would almost, such an interesting question, because it would almost have to affect, but I also believe that there's commonalities. And I love that. I was researching a couple of weeks ago on an episode I want to do later on NDEs. And I think that's so important, because to go back and revisit that, because it connects into reincarnation and the soul contracts and all that kind of thing. But it's interesting when you're looking into that, because they say that there's commonalities, and I forget how many the guy said that was given the lecture. Was so interesting. There's so many commonalities. It seems like there's 34 points that a person that has an NDE can mention, and it might be any combination of those 34, and a certain percentage has at least 10 of those, and a certain percentage has all of them. A very small percentage has all of them, but enough to register. And that's just the people that he's talked to. So there's more, you know what I mean? I think that's so interesting. And I think that it might depend on your culture and your beliefs and what works for you at the time, on what you're vibrating on, the frequency you're vibrating on at the time. Absolutely, those things are going to have an effect on that as well, I would say. Does that make sense? As well as being a ghost. So whatever the person who passed is going through at the time, and whatever happens in that moment where you decide not to go, if you do have that conscious thought and choice, because some don't, because they don't even know they're dead, they somehow just keep moving on. I think that your culture and your beliefs all have something to do with that choice as well, because most of the ones that I've talked to feared what was going on the other side. In fact, I was told by a soldier on the field in Gettysburg, 150th anniversary and Halloween night, the year anyway, not the date. He told me, I want to get it right, and he actually said it in a real Southern accent. It came through so clear. He said, "I've seen hell. I don't want to see what's over there." Just like that. Just as clear and crisp. And it just resonated, in within me. It's almost like it started in my core, and I heard it that way and out my body. It was crazy. It was such a profound night. But I remember that, and I hung on to that, because at that point I had to move to 2 other people that had a ghost, that had a stronger energy to kind of coax this guy along. Like, okay, now's the time we got to all connect into the love thing, because once we do that, everything starts lightening up. but not everybody's willing to go yet, so I was still at that point. But when he said that to me, I'm like, oh, darling, it's certainly going to be better. This is, and that's when I had to start talking to him like a soldier and telling him, listen, you're properly relieved, my friend. We all had to do what we had to do, that you pulled your shadow person out. You did what you had to do. Now you put that back in and you start being you again, we're all changed and we're all different, but we have to do, we're harder on ourselves, judging ourselves, and that's kind of the route we took there. And that we were all brothers and we were all, in that moment of, we understood, we did what we had to do, we walked through this, now we're walking through to the next. And that was the big move. And it was just so profound. It was just so amazing, but again, your thoughts, your culture, your beliefs, and your mindset, I don't think that there's any way to measure that, Lisa. I think that's like just such a great question and statement, because I think that's also what hangs people up too. Not like our young friend who said, I've seen hell, I don't want to go over there and be judged. That's one thing I've really, really tried to put forth on this. I think we judge ourselves. I really do. And I know so many powerful people say it's the other way around, but can you imagine something of pure love, knowing that when you did the things you did, you were young, not just a young soul, but you were a young human, and we were here to go through. So the person that goes through a perfect life with nothing that ever happens and no mistakes made and no, I'm sure people do exist like that, but how much did you ascend? Or maybe because you're living that kind of life, you do ascend fast. I'm not the person to say that. But at that moment, so many stay back because of these things that have been told to us. And the things that we've been told to us that are important here, I think in that moment where we're making that decision, it messes us up, the culture and the beliefs, because we believe that so much that we did here was important, and it is, but if we look at like school and not count so many of the mistakes against us and the things we didn't do and the things we didn't try and the failures, maybe if we counted more on how we got up and what we learned from it and what we lived through, and we're more proud of our scars, like, yeah, I got this one, Betty Lou broke my heart, whatever it is, scars, because it really is true. If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Now, if you're just going to keep through and go, never learn anything and just keep going through making the same mistakes, we all know those people. They're just kind of rolling tumbleweeds through this life. And they don't learn anything. They just get beat up until they can't take anymore. But they do it to themselves as well. But those that get through it and go, oh man, that was a rough one, but we get back up. Somehow we get back up. I think that those are the moments where we actually get a piece of armor. It's like an invisible piece of armor. So, okay, I earned my helmet today. I earned my knee pads today. It's like I need to work on those shin things, because man, I keep banging my shin. But you know what I mean? In life, we beat ourselves up. I was saying to somebody about a week ago, it's deep conversation, and I was telling them that, life has a way of fixing stupid, but it's going to hurt. And the more you keep doing stupid things and making bad choices, man, you're not losing if you can glean from that the wisdom to not do it again. And then really magnify that by helping somebody else learn from it. But man, that's the hardest thing to do. You ever tried to teach a kid, like, don't do that because when I did that, this happened? How's that work out for you? Please learn from my wisdom, my hard-earned wisdom. I have the scars. Look, I lived through it. You don't want to live like that. But it didn't work when we heard that. And it doesn't work when kids hear that. And we wish that we could keep them from going through it. But again, We got to let them. It's their journey. That's what the show is all about. So I think that was very interesting. I loved the Australia. I loved the way this show was produced, the way it was put together. I loved the parapsychologist, that guy. I'd love to sit down and have a talk with him one day. I'm sure he's moved on at this point. I mean, one can only guess, but if he hears us, I thank him for his wisdoms and his open mind and his thoughts. And I wish there was more of this, but I'm glad we found this little gem and we were able to share it. I'm going to go over and see if you guys are saying anything in here, because I can't focus when I'm on a roll. I have to kind of move in closer. Pretty soon I'll have my setup to where I can see things better. I'm working on it little by little, chipping away at it. Oh yeah. I am number crunching NDEs. The evidence is overwhelming. People go, oh, absolutely. And so many things, from the people leaving their bodies and telling everybody what they said in the room, and going through the roof and going out and going off into the light, and just so many different things. It's amazing. I had one myself, and I'll tell you about it the night we do it. I've told the story before, but I still have the scar. Victor. And it's I didn't go that so far, but it was still crazy. But so many people, Daniel Brinkley, 3 times hit by lightning, crossed over. One of the best lessons I learned, I just thought about it the other day too, because I was at work, and how everybody, push your buttons, push, and you're just like, I'm like talking to my spirit guides. Look, I came in today. I promised I wasn't going to lose my temper. I promised I wasn't going to, I promised I was going to be good. I'm like, trying to be stoic, and you're doing all the things, you're saying all the stuff, and you're driving to work, and you just know what kind of day you're going to have, and you know who's going to be there, and you just know, you're like, I just want to breeze through this and do my, go home. And sure enough, I made it exactly 8 minutes. I'm literally having the conversation as I'm driving. I'm listening to a little music on the way. I don't have a very long drive, but the whole time I'm, talking to my spirit guys. I'm going, look, this is my goal for today, and I'm doing this shit. I'm like, this is my goal for today. If you could, intervene for me, this is what I like to do, and I'll do the work myself, but just open the door, do this, whatever. And I achieved my goals. But I did not achieve the getting severely annoyed immediately. And I'm just like, I promised myself I was blowing up. And they just kept, it was just like the other side was going, here you go. And they're just poking at you. And just like, that's it. And it wasn't really bad, but it was just, I said my piece, and I was like, now I'm done. Take it over there, or I'll go home quick. I don't even care. I would rather remove myself from the situation. But if you're in a room full of people who are all pushed, all their buttons are pushed, the times we're living in, the confusion, the fear, you try to cut people slack. And you try to just give them space, and I'm sure everybody goes through it. But I told you that story to let you know that light workers are really getting pushed on right now. I'm sure every friend I have right now is wondering, why am I not hearing from you? I'm not talking to anybody. I'm trying to keep my head in research. I'm trying to get focused on the future. I suggest everybody do that. I'm going to tell you right now, if you ever thought about opening a business, now is the time. It may sound insane. Mark what I'm saying. If you want to do a small business, look, start putting in for grants, start doing whatever. This is a time. Look around you, look at your surroundings. How's your town doing? Does it need something else, a boost? Lots of towns want to have people bringing back small businesses and things again, and one employee, 2 employee, whatever, just you. But this is a time to do it. We're going to open up, and it is going to be amazing. I just feel it. We've all got to this point. We still have to get people over a few more rough things, and I think the sky's the limit, kids. I really do. I really do. And I'm getting all these downloads for that. You know, people like look at the housing market. Look at what's selling and not selling right now. Where are you in town? You know, are there going to be factories opening up? Are they bringing in new things? This is a new opportunity to get a better job, to come out of the crap we just sludged through. You know, whatever it may be, this might be the time. I'm not saying go out and buy stuff and do all this. I'm not saying that. I'm saying think smart. Try to look ahead. You know, what are you going through? What's going on around you in your neck of the woods? You know, what country are you in? What's going on in that country? If that country needs to flip back to common sense, look at your local. Start getting involved. Start thinking about citizenship again. We lost citizenship for a while. When you lose that, when you lose the core of family, when you lose that core of town, your county, you know, what's going on. They've tried to separate us so much. We need to get back tight. So you start a group. Just, I don't care if it's a book club, you know, just to get the neighbors around. Maybe you start a little thing with somebody else. You go around and you know, you just check on the neighbors. Say, hey, I live on this block and I just wanted, whatever it may be. Know your level, whether it's the local school board, the local run for friggin' sheriff, whatever it is, your heart, your talent, this is the time. Start planning. Start planning. You know, do that art and sell it. You know, go do the local farmers market once a month. You know, whatever it may be, what works for you. But this is the time for prosperity. This is the time to put forth that faith in, I'm going to make my world better, my square foot of real estate, so it will blossom out and help others. And that brings me back to the NDE with Daniel Brinkley, who said the third time he passed and he knew, you know, he had gone through and seen his life review and everything else. He said the other two times he really wanted to change, and he changed a little bit, but not enough. And he reverted back to his old ways. And, you know, somebody had other plans for him and kept hitting him with lightning. It's really a wild story, but you should hear him say it himself. He tells it very well. And the third time he went back really did it for him. It changed him forever. And he started being a big hugger. And he was at a party and he was in there hugging everybody. Hi, how you doing? You know, and this is a big difference from a Marine that, you know, the tours of duties that he did and the things that he did and the job he had and the way he came back and the things he went through. And God bless him, you know, untold tales, I assure you, of the struggles, you know, that people have. That's why I'm such a patriot, because you will respect that flag. Don't do anything in front of me. I'm telling you right now. I've jumped down people's friends of mine, you know, that should know better than to say something like disrespecting that flag in front of me, because I know good people, known them. So that means something to me. Long may she wave. And she will. So he goes back and he hugs everybody. And the guy says to him, boy, you really are a hugger. You know, because you're hugging everybody and you're just kind of touchy-feely and everything else. He goes, oh, wait a minute. He goes, you misunderstood. So I'm not hugging you. I'm hugging me. Because when I get back over there, I'm going to need it. Because I'm going to go through everything I did wrong. I'm going to see its effect on that person. I'm going to feel what that person felt. And then I'm going to feel bad about that. And I'm going to need these hugs. And I suggest you start doing the same. When you get to a certain point where you know that you know, we kind of have an edge to us where it might be off-putting to people because she's so adamant about this, or she's so stern about certain things. You damn skippy I am. I've seen the damage that lies can do. I've seen the damage that being a charlatan can do. I've seen the damage and the sadness and the emotional wreckage that it can leave when people just flippantly throwing things off the top of their head and making up stuff for whatever it may be, for clicks, for to sell a book. It's none of my business. The point is, I'm going to do everything I can to straighten that out. One little thing at a time. And if I'm wrong, I will tell you I'm wrong. Somebody show me how it doesn't do damage to somebody to say that wasn't your grandmother that came visit you. It was a demon and you were fooled and you're an idiot and you should go do this and stop looking into that or talking about it or anything else. And that person leaving crushed, had hope. How dare you? Stay out of it if you don't have anything nice to say. You know, that's just my opinion. But damn, you know? Let the person, how did the person feel? How do you feel about it? Do you want to talk about it? Why do you think that everything is that? What's wrong with, you know, where are you coming from? Because if you're trying to tell me that you can't feel evil like you can feel love and vice versa, then honey, your filters are clogged. Maybe you're the problem. If you think everything is dark and who are you hanging with? What are you doing? Because I'm telling you something. There's more love and more light and more blessings and more good time stories, good news, people helping people, people rescuing animals, people rescuing other people, people going out of their way, people giving, you know, strangers transplants and things. Police officers driving a lost kid. I don't know how many states, just the other day this week, because he promised that kid he would get him back to his father. And when he was found, there was some kind of problem with the transportation, and the kid was disappointed. He said, I'm going to drive him myself. Decent human beings, story after story after story. But the news doesn't tell you that. Facebook doesn't tell you that. Now Facebook is filled with a bunch of AI, and I'm not complaining. Cats in outfits working at Starbucks, and you know, cats making pancakes, and you know, robot puppies and AI this and all kinds of stuff, and the forever parade of people telling me what they had for lunch, for the love of God. You know, all over the internet. But what you don't see often enough is all the good in the world. And I highly recommend magnify that as much as you possibly can, even if it's just a spark. If you lose your temper at work, you know, rock on, you know. Sometimes you got to be, you know, you don't have to be insane. You know, I didn't throw anything. I just said, look, this is how it is. You know what I mean? I'm not here for this shit. I'm here for this, and this. If you need me to do anything else, I can pick up my stuff and I can go. You know, this is your world. I really don't want to be in it right now anyway. You know, it's like people need to have boundaries, and people are only going to do what you allow them to get away with doing with you. And that nobody has the right to abuse you. Nobody has the right to talk down to you or treat you with disrespect or any of that. We need to start teaching people that again, common sense, respect yourself, respect other people, live and let live, and move on. And I think ghosts are the same way. We got to stop putting them in little boxes and saying, you can't do that because I read somewhere that you can't, you know. And I'm going to be honest about the water. I don't know. I think that's one of the things that absolutely mesmerized me. I think the first time, if you could recall such a thing, to be honest with yourself, but I honestly believe that the first time I heard about that was when I read Amityville Horror. And at the end of that, I think it was the follow-up, because when they left the house, the Lutzes, if I get it correctly, they left and went to stay with her mother. Was the only place they could go. And they crossed water. They had to fly or something, and they went over the ocean, and I think Jay Anson said, it says that spirits can't cross water, and so maybe they'll be left alone or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, of course. I read it in 1976, for the love of God. So, and I never read it again. I didn't need to. But I think that's the first time I heard about it, and I started looking into it, and I did hear it. It was in a lot of lore. Steve and I have talked about this, and also there was stuff about, certain things can't pass a bridge or something like that. I think there's a lot of things in that could very well be true. Is it true for everything? I don't know. Here's the thing. I'm not sure enough about it that I would say to somebody who was in a case that they were in trouble, just cross water, it can't follow you. I don't know that that's true, but I love the questions about if a ghost was on a boat, they would have to stay there because they were in the water and they couldn't leave. I don't know. I mean, why would, like Abbott and Costello movie we saw where the ghosts were in the well and the curse held them at the well. They couldn't leave the grounds. Are there cases like that? I would say probably yes. But I think it also connects into Lisa's question about culture and what the belief is. Because what if it has more to do with the belief of the ghost or the entity and the rules they have to follow? And that's why it's different and works for some and not others. That's possible. I mean, isn't it? Because if it's a living being, if it was ever a living being, I mean, even, if it was never human, it was still a being, a creature, we have to follow some boundaries and rules. Very interesting. I'm not sure. I don't have the answer. But I've rambled on long enough, and I hope you enjoyed the the Australian. I really thought that was a great little show. I'm so glad I found it, and I'm glad I got to share it with you. I've got one more little short one here. It's like 2 minutes, and then we can get out. But I thought this was interesting, and it was, I think, a local news. Was that it? Yeah, a little local news of it was I don't think this one was in this show, but it's supposedly famous in this area. And again, I've never been to Australia, so I don't know. This one was this was a ghost captured in Monte Cristo homestead. It's really quick. See if you see it. Look at the upper right side. See the face? And now it's so fast. When I first saw it, I thought it was a woman walking through, but I think it's more the face. I can see the ears and the tie. Did you see that? Play it one more time for you. Go back, play it one more time. Right there. His face, ears, his hairline, his everything. That's crazy. But again, like we say all the time with AI and everything, it's going to be hard. But that one, it's possible. It's very possible. Again, I hate to say anything's not real because I've taken plenty of pictures that I know darn well what was going on when I took them. So, people, oh, it's this, it's that, and I'm like, no, it was none of those things. It's something paranormal. That might be it. Is that it? No. Nope. Hang on, bear with me. The newscast. Where did it go? I've got so much JFK stuff in here, you just wouldn't even know. All right. I think that's good. It was just a little newscast about one of the places that we saw, and they, again, are still seeing ghosts to this day. So very interesting. A guy with a mustache. It could have been. It was like that. And you could see his ears and everything. Oz is on my bucket list of places to visit. Yeah, with all those kangaroos and everything. Absolutely love the kangaroos, but I'll tell you, I've seen them do some mean things too. Have you ever seen that meme with the kangaroo is drowned in the dog, and the guy had to go out and punch the kangaroo to get his dog? Oh gosh, that's just so scary. They look like boxers, you know. I love you too, baby. Thank you for being here. Thanks for everybody putting in all your input tonight. It was fantastic. I love going over these things with you. Thank you so much, Lindsay. And I hope you heard the announcement. I'm going to try to do the show on Saturday night, 9 o'clock ish. I'm going to try that. We're going to see if it works. You know, some things are out of my hands. I'm working through it, so everybody will be happy. That would be great. Yeah, we all? Aren't we all? I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. It's so good to see everybody, and I can't tell you enough. I'll know a little bit more tomorrow about what our movie's going to be Tuesday. Again, what I normally do is I'm trying to get them to where they're clear. I hate to show them where I have to show a commercial in it. Even if I have to rent it to show it, I probably have to do that with JFK. I just rented and watched JFK JFK Revisited Through the Looking Glass, the second one, because my thing is I want to keep up with the files that are coming through and the changes that are being made. I'm really sticking to Jim Eugenio, but I'm also taking in everything else. My long talks with Mark Shaw, I'm trying to get in touch with him to get him back on here. We can talk about the whole New Orleans connection and things like that. And I'm trying to bring some other people in too. But what I'm trying not to do is bring to somebody in that is going to start bringing in muddy in the waters. You know, I'm all up for other opinions, but don't tell me Oswald did it alone, because at this point, stop it. You know, I'm going through a lot of Jim Marrs stuff. The reason I lean so much on him, 50 plus years of investigating this, he was there in Dallas as a 21-year-old, I think, cub reporter. He was down there quick after they, announced it on the TV. He was down there talking to people that he knew, getting some inside information. He was familiar with the Carousel Club and Jack Ruby and a lot of the players, and he never gave up digging for the truth, and he also is a person that believes that there was possibly somebody in the sewer. And I know that sounds strange, but if you'd seen the way the sewer drain was, because one of the shots seemed to almost come out level, and they would have had to been right there in front of the limo as it came through to do it, as well as the grassy knoll, different witnesses, and some of the things that maybe you haven't heard. Some of the witness statements that didn't wind up in the Warren report, some things that have come out since that have been totally debunked for whatever reason. Somebody wanted to sell a book, somebody wanted a last minute of fame, whatever it may be. But again, these are all threads, and all the threads go into tapestry because it's the only way it makes the picture, right? We don't want to make a quilt. We don't want to take our big chunk theory and try to fit it in and just, hack it in to make this pattern. We want a picture. So that's what we're going for. It takes longer on the research. I love you all. Thank you all for being here. And thank you for all your kind words. And I'll let you know more about the movie tomorrow. Thank you to you, Chris. Thank you for that great question. Everybody, Lisa, all your input, everybody, Scott, everybody that, it helps us think outside the box when we all get involved and throw in our ideas. So thank you for everybody being here. Love you a whole bunch. Let's take one more look at Australia on the way out, and I love y'all. Good night. See you tomorrow.